Hi, my name is Jodi Ogle, and I decided to pick servant leadership as my final project paper. The reason I picked servant leadership is because it is a model that I've always been interested in. My husband and I pastored a Foursquare church for 4 years as senior pastors, but we were on staff there for about 12. And during that time, we really tried to implement the ideas of servant leadership, trying to set the example of service without totally understanding what we were doing. Fast forward now, we actually are currently not in ministry, but we both work at a school in the Phoenix area called Great Hearts, and it's a charter school, a public charter school. There's about 22 of them in the valley here in Phoenix, and their esteemed model of leadership is servant leadership. And so from the top down, it's something that they're always talking about, and the model that they value. So I just wanted to learn more about it and see how I could implement it better as an employee of the school and as I move forward in leadership in that school. The phrase servant leadership was coined by Robert Greenleaf in the 1970s in a series of articles that he wrote about leadership. He was an employee of AT&T for nearly 40 years and worked mostly as a troubleshooter, traveling to various locations and helping them figure out how to best serve their customers. He also did some amazing things. He started the first corporation assessment center, and he had started a lot of programs to promote minorities and women to positions that weren't just menial positions. So he definitely knew his stuff and did some great things. After he retired, he wrote a series of articles, essays, and one of the things that he said is the servant leader is servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then the conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. So the whole basis was that people were servants first, and out of that servant heart, out of that desire to see something develop, they would rise up into a leadership position. So it really is what sets this type of leadership apart from any other leadership, is because it's birthed out of something that somebody is already doing. They're serving, they're trying to make the world a better place. And Robert Greenleaf even aspired to make the world a better place through servant leadership. It wasn't just about how to boost productivity or even how to meet customers' needs as much as it was to really serve the followers that he engaged with and the followers that were under these leaders in order to make the world a better place. So it's really what sets servant leadership apart. It focuses on the follower as well. He also said the best test of whether servant leadership is working is, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? And what is the effect on the least privileged in the society? Will they benefit or at least not be further deprived? So it's an interesting take on what effect this will have, not just on a corporation, not just on a bunch of workers, but what effect will this have on a brighter, more social-wide scale. After Greenleaf published his essays on servant leadership, many people started to become interested in it and focus on it. And there was a man in particular, Larry Spears, who started to define a little bit more Greenleaf's theory. And he said the 10 characteristics of servant leadership are listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, you guys. After Greenleaf published his essays on servant leadership, many people started to study it and further develop it. One person was Larry C. Spears, and he identified 10 characteristics of servant leadership. And his characteristics that he defined were listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, and commitment to growth of the people and building community. So if you go through all of these, they're all really important, and if you can use any of them in dealing with followers, you're going to have some great outcome. But in my paper, I really focused on commitment to the growth of people. because I think this also is something that sets it apart from maybe other forms of leadership where the goal is productivity or to get people mobilized. And there's something about the commitment of the growth of people, commitment to the growth of people, that's really important, especially for people in ministry, because it can't just be about getting people to our church or having bigger outreaches, but we really have to be committed to the growth of not only congregants, but people on our staff as well. And so this just seemed to be particularly interesting as I looked at it, and how are some ways that we can do that. It is pretty countercultural to other business models, and so it's just something worth noting. One way that we can really commit to the growth of people is to really facilitate the needs of others. And so Daniel Wheeler, who is a professor at the University of Nebraska, has an essay on ways that higher education can do that in those kinds of realms, which was interesting to me. But he said facilitating means helping students, faculty, and staff clarify a problem or situation, identify ways that they can address it, and provide encouragement for them to carry out a solution. So I think often we skip right over helping people identify their problem into just trying to fix whatever's going on so we can move on and be more productive. But I think if we take the time to really listen, like the characteristics I mentioned before, but to really listen and help people identify what it is they're even struggling with, that's a great first step. And then really commit to helping them reach a solution, whether it's counseling or whether it's, just coming alongside them and being a mentor to them. And in school, that's really important because our school is committed to the child as a whole person, not just their grades, not just, the kind of essays that they write, but really how they're developing as a whole person. So it's fairly different from other schools in our area. Arizona ranks right at the bottom for education. I think we're 48th or 49th in the United States. And what we're doing at Great Hearts is pretty revolutionary. We're turning out young men and women who know how to think, they know how to develop ideas, they know how to write, and they're complete as a person, and colleges love them, and they do really well in higher institutions. So I think that it's really important to help people identify what it is that they're struggling with, and then develop a solution, and be committed to helping them carry that out too. So I think that's kind of the foundation of servant leadership, that we walk alongside people every step of the way. This can get difficult because it can be really time consuming. I see that as the biggest downside. Of course, we can't walk with every single person or walk through every situation. As pastors, we know that that'll lead to burnout. And even Jesus, who is the ultimate model of servant leadership, didn't do that. There were many times where he withdrew and asked the crowds to go away. It was done. It was time to move on. And he knew that in a huge crowd of thousands of people, not every single need was going to be met. And so I think it's just important to remember that we're faithful to what we can do, but we're realistic about what we can do. And then, understanding who it is that are even our followers, identifying who that is, and just being able to be committed to the growth of each one of those people. As I think about ways that this is practically being put into practice where I work, I'm reminded of a brand new teacher. I'll call her Carla for the sake of anonymity. New teacher, never taught before, straight out of college. On paper, she looks like she'll be a great teacher. She has all the qualifications. She seems to have the background knowledge. But after a few weeks of her being in the classroom, it was pretty apparent that she was struggling. She couldn't maintain the classroom. Parents were starting to email our headmaster just questioning what was going on in the classroom and whether the kids were learning anything. And at that point, our school leadership had a choice to make. They could either cut their losses and move on and try and find someone new, or they could really invest, knowing that this person has the content knowledge that they need. They just lack some skills. This person really wants to be a teacher. She's committed to it. She just doesn't know how. And so our school leadership really came alongside her and began to coach her. They were in her classroom all the time. They mentored her multiple times a week just on what she did well and what was lacking, but in a really kind and compassionate way, to where she felt totally supported. She felt like, you know, she could make a mistake, but someone had her back, which is really important. The leadership wasn't just going to throw her to the wolves, the parents, but they defended her and were committed to making sure that she could become the best teacher possible. And just that little bit of commitment, which she probably wouldn't have found in many other schools, it's really started to turn her class around and turn her around as an instructor. And I think she'll be a wonderful asset to our school. But it takes patience. It takes leaders who are committed to walking people through, identifying the problem, and walking through the solution with them, listening and you know, listening to even what's going on outside of the classroom, what's going on in her personal life. You know, why is she feeling like she doesn't measure up, and just coming at it from all those angles, I think, is an important part of servant leadership. So coming at it with this approach, with this particular teacher, definitely has made her become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and more likely to become a servant. She's being inspired to serve. She's being inspired to serve her students. And so it's just an awesome thing to see. One thing that I immediately think of, like, how do we commit to the growth of people around us? And one thing that's mentioned in a lot of the articles that I read, and just something that seems really obvious to me, is just taking time. Slowing down, taking time to listen to people, to listen to their concerns, to walk through their issues with them. And I know that it can happen in church where we become so busy that we don't always have time for every individual need. But I think we try harder when we're in ministry. When we're in the workplace, we have tasks that need to get done. Everything is urgent. And so to really take time to listen to a student that's struggling, or, you know, a fellow co-worker who's just having a bad day and they're struggling with, you know, their home life and their finances and all of that. It doesn't totally pertain to work, but it does. I mean, it because it's about their whole person. And that's what I really like about servant leadership. It really does have to do with the whole person and treating the whole person as valuable, not just what they can bring to the table for your organization. And so that also is one thing that I think sets it apart. The other way that I think servant leadership can really happen is committing to serve even when people aren't watching. It's one thing to take all the time in the world talking with people. It's another thing to go pick up trash in the courtyard after lunch when nobody's around. We have 600 kids eating lunch in a pretty small space, and trash has been a big problem. And sometimes just going after lunch and picking up, and nobody's seen. But it's important because it cultivates something in my heart or in an individual's heart where they're serving because they want to serve. They're serving because they love their community, and they see the value in it. And so I think that that's important, to find ways where we can just serve for the sake of serving, not because we're trying to lead somebody in it, or not because we're hoping that people see us and will be an example, but just because we truly love what we're a part of. And I know as pastors, we do that. We all do that as people in ministry. You know, we're often the ones cleaning the bathrooms and straightening the chairs and doing all the things that people don't see. But I think that it's really with that heart, that happy heart, where that has transformative power. And then as people do see, because eventually they do, it does inspire them to want to serve as well. And then out of that service, out of that servant's heart, leadership is birthed. So it's just an important and wonderful thing to see as you see it take root in people. And I've already, as I said, our school really esteems that model, and so we hear a lot about it. And doing this paper really helped me to understand a little bit better what it means and just the components of it. And I actually can identify it in our school. I identify it in many of our teachers, and even in a lot of our students. I'm starting to see that as they see people serve, they're inspired to serve themselves. And that turns into leadership. That turns into just a powerful movement of people serving each other and putting others first and esteeming others above themselves, which is so much of what the gospel espouses and so much of what Jesus said was important, that we love God and we love others. And so I think that this is the perfect model for church, a church that I would want to attend or would want to be a part of. I think that this is a really powerful model, and I love that I'm part of an organization that holds it in such high esteem. And not everyone in this organization are Christians. It is a public school organization, and so it's pretty powerful when people that aren't believers are understanding this need to serve others. And I think it puts kind of a question in their heart, which is really interesting. And in our organization, we do talk about Jesus as the ultimate servant leader, and that comes up a lot, even when people aren't believers. So it's a powerful thing to be a part of, and I'm really excited that I had a chance to study it a little deeper, and I look forward to implementing more and more of it as I explore it and wrestle with it and continue to learn about it. I really look forward to it being pretty revolutionary in my life. So I hope you enjoyed this. This was a little different for me, but thank you for the opportunity to share with you and for the opportunity to learn a little bit more. God bless.